Okay, so now we will move forward and invite another friend calling in from Europe. We have Dr. Michaela Gloeckler calling in. As soon as we were so grateful for her to join us for Ita Beckmann's birthday, it soon appeared, well, Marie Steiner's birthday is coming up soon. And just as you said, what theme more important than this form of healing and reconciliation in the social? So, Michaela, are you there? We're so glad to have you, and hope everyone is ready. She'll be speaking for about an hour. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Theodore. Thank you, Dottie, for your words. Before I start, I must say that I got 1 hour before a call that a friend of mine is close to the threshold of death and he wants to see me once again, so for the last. And therefore I will be picked up by car at 6:15. So I will close my contribution in about 55 minutes latest. And then I have to leave. I'm very sorry, but I wanted to share this in the beginning.
There might streams here.
I think this dramatic issue, if you get such a call and you are in total other thoughts, I was occupied with Marie Steiner, then I felt this has something to do with her as well, because she was so in middle of life, so realistic. And her life was full of drama, of suffering, of struggling with forces of hindrances. If you compare this with the life of Ita Beckmann, it is so different. She was born in a little town which belongs today to Poland and was in that time part of Russia, as one of 8 children. And her father, von Sievers, was a Danish, Swedish family, and her mother was a German, from a German family, but also grown up in Russia. Many Germans lived in that time in Russia in the 19th century. And he belonged to the Russian military. So he was the general in this little town and looked for law and order. And then he had to move to Riga. This is Latvia. So the family moved around the Baltic Sea. And when the father became a pensioner, Marie Steiner was 10 years old, and then they moved definitely to St. Petersburg, where she then went to school. But she suffered from the closeness, from the strictness, from being part of the society, of all this, and this enormous lack of freedom. And when she then went to school, it was clear that universities did not yet receive students, women students. So she was not allowed to get an higher up graduation and university study. She was so hungry to know everything. She was extremely interested in everything which happened politically, economically, literature, life on earth. That was her deep interest. And then the only thing she could get as permission from her family was to do a training as a teacher. And so she did. And when one of her brothers left St. Petersburg and bought a farm in a smaller town, she immediately decided to go with him and to escape from the family rules. And then in this village where the farm was, she became a most beloved teacher. And it was a poor village, and she cared for the children, she cared for the families. She absolutely served the needs of those who were in need. And she even worked hard to get a better health care in this village. And only because her brother died, she turned back, she had to turn back to St. Petersburg when she was 27 years old. And then she was invited as a former student to her school where she went, because there was a sort of jubilee and very famous artists were invited to make a piece on stage from Friedrich Schiller, Maria Stuart. And she was asked to play Maria Stuart, so the main part of that drama from Schiller. And this was an so incredible success, how she did that. And best artists were the coaches to work with the students and these lead people, so to say, that due to this enormous success, she got the permission by her parents to do a training as an actress. And so she, but the family said, but not in Russia, not where people will see that you become an artist. So this was not seen as worthy for this military and high society family von Sievers. And so she escaped to Paris and was there supported by her family for 2 years and had their best teachers and worked hard to really develop her actor skills. But she realized the normal situation in these theaters, Comédie Française, and the training, it seemed to her so superficial. She was looking for what is really the word, what poets are bringing as a spiritual content on stage. And as artists, we have to serve these spiritual ideals and perform really, good values, real life experiences, and use the word to reveal what lives in human souls. So she had total other ideals about theater, speech, language, drama, and how to put it on stage and so on. Therefore, she even did not accept a very good invitation to the most famous theater in Germany, the Berlin Schiller Theater, because when she came there and looked around and talked with the people there, she realized it is the same, from her point of view, decadent style. And she didn't want to join that. So she was just scared what to do. And in this time of not knowing, she remained in Berlin. She took the time to continue her translation from Edouard Jouret's books about the great initiates, because that was really what she was interested in. But through this invitation to the Schiller Theater in Berlin, she was now in Berlin, exactly at the time when Rudolf Steiner as well was in Berlin. And she was now 33 years old. It was the year 1900 when she met for the first time Rudolf Steiner and turned into the circles of the Theosophical Society. And then she raised immediately, when she listened to Rudolf Steiner and realized he speaks out of real spiritual knowledge. He performs what I was always looking for. She immediately came to him and said, we need in the Western world a Christian's esoteric and spirituality. And that was for him the Parzival question, to bring anthroposophy and to work openly out of his own as an initiate. So therefore he decided to take over the German branch of the Theosophical Society, but got from the leadership of the Theosophical Society the permission to teach his own spiritual research and his Christian esoteric pathways and revelations. And so from the very beginning, raising the question, which an initiate has to wait until he can bring what he has as mission, she was the one who opened this door for him. And so she could then accompany the whole development of anthroposophy. First, in the framework of the Theosophical Society, but then she was very active in the foundation of the Anthroposophic Society in 1912, and then the whole situation in Munich to prepare this event of separation from the Theosophical Society. And then all the different stages from Munich to Dornach. And then when the School of Spiritual Science was founded and she became the leader of the performing arts section, then she was permanently in service of eurythmy and speech and drama. And they played for thousands of people. Mostly the performances were completely booked out. She became, in the name of the Goetheanum, with her Goetheanum stage, very famous. They even were invited then later, after Rudolf Steiner's death, to this famous world exhibition to Paris to perform Faust. So she was in the midst of the cultural life of her time. That is just a sketch about how she became so supportive and the first pillar for Rudolf Steiner's work, but also the founder of a total new artistic cultural stream. She gave Rudolf Steiner the possibility, and together with her, they could develop this, to bring anthroposophy into all the arts. So this is one of her missions, that she encouraged Rudolf Steiner to give spiritual insights to all the artistic activities, even more than language, drama, speech, eurythmy, also about all the other arts. And I admire her very much, how she understood everything what Rudolf Steiner brought. When you read her introductions, because after Rudolf Steiner's death, her main task was to publish all the lectures, the books, to bring about this whole, what is the name in English? Nachlassverwaltung. So this, all what Rudolf Steiner left as written material, to bring this in a high quality edition and to save Rudolf Steiner's work for humanity. What would we be without this general edition of all Rudolf Steiner's work, which will be rounded up over the next few years until 2025. The goal is that then everything will be published. So this is an enormous work, and she started with that. And it was, for me, so touching to read her introductions to some very important publications of Rudolf Steiner's lectures. And for example, when she published Art as Revelation of Mystery Wisdom, beautiful lectures, she wrote in her preface, art is the way that the human eye is able to grasp itself. Ein Weg zur Ergreifung des Ich ist die Kunst. And then she says it is the best way to grasp, to get in hand your own eye activity if you do it through the arts, because science is already total materialistic and religion is driven up and is now a power institution. It is not serving anymore really the spiritually present revelations of the spirit. So with religion and art, you cannot really grasp your eye, but in the arts, mystery, culture, and spiritual revelation is still the closest. And if you read this, you really feel that she was an initiate in this field. And Rudolf Steiner, in his letters, that is most wonderful. We have a whole volume. I don't know if this is published in English. All the letters which were saved between Rudolf Steiner and Marie Steiner, they are published. And on his birthday, February 27, in his last birthday in 1925, he is writing a letter to her. And in this letter, he writes, how happy and grateful and deeply touched he is that she brings this sacrifice not to be with him while he is ill, but that she cares for the Waldorf school, which he cannot visit now, that she is performing eurythmy all around in Germany, that she really serves the work of anthroposophy. How grateful he is. And then he continues and said, you know how deep we are connected. You know it. You feel it. And that destiny brought as well other individualities close to me. That is my destiny. That is karma. But you have conquered all. It's not said. He says, you has conquered for yourself a deep understanding of my destiny. And that is so helpful for me. And then he says, only with you I am able to talk and to judge about delicate matters as if I would talk with me. You are the only one with whom I can really, today we would say, we can discuss on eye level. We can discuss total collegial on the same level of intention and insight. And that is what he says here in this letter to Marie Steiner. It is this, you are the only one to whom I really allow to judge about me and to judge about what I'm writing. And I'm so sad that I had now to give a manuscript without your controlling eyes, without your judgment about it, because she could really give him additional advice, remarks. She was extremely, congenial. It's maybe the best word. And then he says, of course, I would love to have you here beside my bed, but it would for me not tolerable to have you here and that you leave your work in the world. And I'm so happy that you are in the world and that you overcome this desire now to be with me. And this is a total other relationship as with Ita Wegman. In another letter, he says, you are for me the priest. He really saw her in one of her past incarnations where she was a priest. And this was for him so significant that she had this high level of just sensing if something is true or not. And her judgment could be so sharp. And because she was an artist as well emotional, so some people could not cope with that. One can understand this. But of course, Rudolf Steiner could cope even if she reacted emotional. And there's a nice story. Once in Dornach, they were waiting for a visitor. And right before he came, Rudolf Steiner had to confess to Marie Steiner that he had other obligations at a date where they wanted to do something together. And so he had to say, I have to cancel that. So, and in this moment, she really exploded a bit and was so angry that he could not stand to his for her very important date. And in this moment, the visitor entered where she exploded. And then Rudolf Steiner nicely went at the door, and one heard her still in the background. When he opened the door, he did not wait until this is over. And he said to the visitor, that is she. And this visitor felt how proud Rudolf Steiner was that she was she in all the colors of her soul, just honest and showing if she is sad and tired, of course, then you are not so well controlled. But these were, of course, exceptions. But I wanted to share it because Rudolf Steiner really was happy about this deep, deep, honest partner only oriented towards truth. And I would like to give you some other little examples how gifted and how spiritually present and how competent in regard wisdom and cultural knowledge Marie Steiner was. This is a nice little booklet by Ellie Simons. I don't know if this is in English also available, with beautiful little stories. So it's not a big one. One could easily translate it, maybe for the next year's birthday celebration. And there is a little chapter about how people experienced Marie Steiner when they met her. And once an anthroposophic doctor came to her, and he was angry about certain practices in Velida and how the Velida company is run, and was a bit frustrated. And because she was part of the board and the board were closely connected with Velida, he thought, I will bring my problems directly to her as the right hand of Rudolf Steiner. And then he started a little bit, and then he realized that Marie Steiner listened calmly and then responded out of such a deep knowledge, knowing Velida in all details, knowing the economic situation, knowing the co-worker situation. He was absolutely oriented that this doctor soon did not dare to say anything else, because he realized how one-sided and not good informed he himself was, and he stopped his complaints and was deeply impressed about her competence. Then a oil multi-billionaire from America was visiting Frau Dr. Marie Steiner. And when he then shared with his friends the result of this encounter with her, he said, I was speechless how I could talk with her about the oil industry and the oil company businesses. He was absolutely amazed and found this incredible. He never would have thought about that. He thought maybe they talk a bit about arts. No, she talked with the people who were visiting her about her issues. She was interested in all fields of life. She was an all-round anthroposophist, and anthroposophy want to renew all life fields. And so it was for her self-understanding that she was open-minded and interested in everything. And by reading, by studying, by talking with competent people, she was permanent learning. She was a cultural oriented and creative person. So there are many stories, but then also some very touching one. We all know that this piece about Rudolf Steiner was so grateful that Marie Steiner could cope with Ita Wegmann, with Edith Marion, with other people very close to Rudolf Steiner. Edith Marion saved Rudolf Steiner's life. They had a deep destiny connection. There's also a big book about all the letter exchange with Edith Marion. So were coping with this, and Rudolf Steiner was so grateful. But after his death, due to circumstances, also due to many members of the society and things which happened, misunderstandings primarily. For example, one very deep misunderstanding was that Ita Wegmann, when Rudolf Steiner got worse 2 days before he died, Ita Wegmann said to Ludwig Noll, "Can you please call and telegram for Dr. Steiner in Stuttgart that she turns immediately to Dornach, to her husband, because she did not dare." Therefore, she said to Ludwig Noll, "Please do this," because both physicians did the care for Rudolf Steiner, a man and a woman, and also to share all the duties. And then Ludwig Noll did not do. We do not know if he forgot or if he simply also did not dare. And then when it came close to death and Ita Wegmann realized that Marie Steiner is not informed, she immediately informed her and said, "Come as quick you can." And she came right after his death. And things like that are, of course, horrible, but they are coming about by human weaknesses, by misunderstandings, by forgetting, by being not fully present. And so things happened, and we all know the tragedy after Rudolf Steiner's death, and that at the end, Ita Wegmann and the leader of the mathematical astronomical section were Elisabeth Wrede were excluded from the board of directors, but they were still, of course, allowed to do their scientific work, which both continued with in the School of Spiritual Science. So Ita Wegmann never felt dispensed from leading the medical section, not officially, but inwardly. She cared for the medical movement always until she died, and the same Elisabeth Wrede did. But it was, of course, this horrible split. And the big question, can this ever be healed? And you know, as I know, that many books, many contributions are written about this tragedy, and that groups in the Anthroposophic Society were fighting against one another, and so on and so forth. And one of these members shared, she knew also this board of directors of the first hour around Rudolf Steiner. She said, "These people were not at all the problem. It was the members who brought this fire and this tension into the conflict." It was for me very interesting that this was her observation. But we know all these complaints and these more tragic aspects. But I must confess, when I was asked to go to Dornach, of course, then I started to read a bit the history of the society and to prepare myself. How will it be when I work on this place? And then by studying the documents, I saw that Marie Steiner, Ita Wegmann, Albert Steffen, they all made peace before they died. And it's only up to the members to realize that and to make peace as well and to do good work and not to continue with sentimentalities and complaints. Very interesting. Albert Steffen wrote a drama about Alexander's transformation, in which he, because after Steiner's death, he got all the past incarnations to know by Steiner and Wegmann, and realized how important this destiny was. And so he wrote a drama about Alexander's transformation and how she became a healer. And this was his artistic way to overcome his opposition against her. But the most touching was for me to read Marie Steiner's article in the Goetheanum, Christmas 1942 to 43. She felt so sad about the consequences which were emerged through this split. And of course, she was part of it, and a very important part. But she inwardly felt, I cannot stand before Rudolf Steiner. I cannot cross the threshold of death without having at least tried to heal the wounds I was part of making them. And so she wrote a letter to the members, and asking in this letter to the members, dear members, we are all responsible for anthroposophy. We all have one day to stand in front of Rudolf Steiner when we die. I think we need to overcome our old battle tensions, problems, polarities, hate, or whatever emotions against this or that. We need to make peace. Anthroposophy has a peace message. And of course, it was Christmas where we have this peace message, peace on earth for humans of goodwill. And she begged, so to say, the members for this goodwill. Let us make peace in our society and serve Rudolf Steiner's work. And then she got no response out of the membership, neither her former colleagues, because she was already in tension with Albert Steffen, because he wanted to have what Rudolf Steiner left, all his, he said Rudolf Steiner's lectures and books and manuscripts, this must become under the ownership of the Goetheanum. And Marie Steiner said, no, there is a testament, this belongs to me. And he trusted my judgment about publishing his work. And of course, this was right. And the Swiss lawyers, of course, said this belongs to her. And the Goetheanum had to pay a lot of money because they lost the trial. So there was already a tension, so there was no reaction from Albert Steffen. The only member who responded with a handwritten letter was Ita Wegmann. She wrote, dear Frau Dr. Steiner, I read your lines in the Goetheanum. I find this so important, and I wish that this will be well received. A very, very positive note. And then she signed and said, these words are full of hope. And the meaning, of course, was, I hope with you that this will happen. And then Marie Steiner was deeply touched by this. And now again, something happens that she could not find the right words to write her back, to react. And I know from quite a number of people, she was most of the time living in Beatenberg. This is beautiful in Switzerland, high up in the mountains, because you need to know that Marie Steiner lifelong has a tender health, particularly her rhythmic system, breathing. She needed fresh air. There she was always surrounded by flowers because the flowers gave her an enlivened air impression, so she could breathe better. She was very tender and beautiful, but not with a robust health constitution. And therefore she was in this good air and left Dornach most of the time after, during the wartime in Germany in the later 40s, and the last 2 years, 47 and 48, before she died, she then lived continuously in Beatenberg. But before she went back and forth between Dornach and her flat in Beatenberg. But many people who visited her in Beatenberg, they shared that they found her with Ita Wegmann's letter in her hand. And to some visitors, she said, she showed this letter to them and said, I'm still reflecting how I can the most appropriate answer her. And then Ita Wegmann died, as we know. We celebrated her birthday before Marie Steiner could write her answer. But it shows that both were so ready before they died for a complete forgiveness. And therefore, for me, the whole history of the Anthroposophic Society is a beautiful example for social learning, how to heal destiny, how to overcome destiny obstacles, how to develop social healing. And for this social healing process, the way these two personalities, Ita Wegmann and Marie Steiner, behaved and found together after this dramatic split of the society in which the two ladies were in midst, and how they managed to solve this out of their own inner insight and decision, and out of real selfless love for anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner. And when I consider Marie Steiner's meaning for Rudolf Steiner's work and see her life, we know a bit more today than 30, 40 years ago, then we can really experience she was from the very beginning, when she started as a teacher, she was serving the needs of the people. She learned this through 7 years, serving the needs, doing what is necessary. And out of a sisterly, helpful, healing attitude. And the same qualification she brought then into anthroposophy. She accompanied Rudolf Steiner day by day. She had his household. She looked that everything is perfect, that he has good things to eat, that there is fresh air in the flat. she developed a publishing house, the Philosophisch-Anthroposophischer Verlag. She published Rudolf Steiner's work. She was completely in service of him and all these practical needs on the one hand. And on the other hand, as Rudolf Steiner said, she was the one who understood him best and who knew anthroposophy best. And therefore, she was the one with whom he could judge and discuss delicate matters. And I must say, when first this volume with the letters were published and I came to read these letters, you find such a clarity in judgment. They are not love letters, letters about feelings, letters about personal needs, letters. No, of course, they always end with, I love you, or very cordially, or of course, they were extremely close. But in these letters, you enter into the daily life between the two. It is amazing. Yeah. And she, maybe I can show you one picture. Also, how she looked absolutely like a modern woman. Of course, she has the clothing of her time, but cut hair and clear face. One can firmly see straightforward, honest, spiritually present, looking through all masquerades. She looked through right to the source. Out of what source are you talking? Out of what source you draw your inspiration? She was completely spiritually source oriented. And that was for Rudolf Steiner just what he needed to live with such a companion, his anthroposophic life, serving the spiritual world and humanity. And I must say, when I consider or I read something or I remember on the birthdays of these first Vorstand members, these close co-workers around Rudolf Steiner, it's for me always as well a reflection. What did I learn? For what can I share my gratitude for these people? Because without them, Rudolf Steiner would not have taken on the leadership of the Anthroposophic Society. Without them, he would not have built the School of Spiritual Science. His work was because these people were there and had the right questions in the right moments and offered help and supported him and were with him. And particularly Marie Steiner was for me a very important person, not only because before I did medicine, I did a training as a speech formator, as an actor, and I became a teacher, and then I became a doctor. So I always found a bit part of my own destiny in Marie Steiner's becoming, although she did not end up as a physician, but as a life artist, round a logos artist, a destiny artist. But I had the feeling when I also read how she made peace with Ita Wegmann and looked for social healing as an artist to round up this drama in a good way. I always had this desire to have her photo together with the two photos of Steiner and Wegmann when I had conferences and in my medical section office. I always had the 3 pictures because I felt if I only focus to Ita Wegmann and Rudolf Steiner, this is not true. Marie Steiner is so important for the whole social radiation of anthroposophy, for keeping Rudolf Steiner alive, and for bringing the arts. What would be world of education and medicine without the healing arts? It's impossible. It is not thinkable. And in these last letters, when Marie Steiner was in Stuttgart and Rudolf Steiner was ill in Dornach, they exchanged permanently about the school. And he writes, I'm so glad that you do the arts in the school, that you keep this consciousness in the faculty, in the teachers' faculty, how important the artistic work is for the school. I am so grateful that you keep this flame alive. And we know that before Rudolf Steiner died, he said to one of the visiting teachers from the first Waldorf school, if I could restart the Waldorf school, I would focus on the arts. I would build up the whole world of education much more consequently on the arts. And Ita Wegmann, what did she, when she opened her hospital? Together with Margarete Hauschka, she developed artistic therapy. And what did she say? How to develop it? She said to Margarete Hauschka, you need to study the Waldorf curriculum of the arts. And out of this knowledge, you then need to specify what supports healthy development, to specify and modify how support illness processes towards healing. So as well, Ita Wegmann had a lot of profit and she felt responsible for therapeutic eurythmy. She developed together with Margarete Kirchner-Bockhold therapeutic eurythmia. This was the domain of Marie Steiner. So the arts, this is the heart of anthroposophy. And therefore, if we only say anthroposophy is spiritual science, this is not the full meaning. To the Waldorf teachers, Rudolf Steiner said in the beginning of the first Waldorf school, in his first address, education is enlivened science, enlivened art, enlivened religion. Lebendig werdende Wissenschaft, lebendig werdende Kunst, lebendig werdende Religion. Science, art, and religion must come so together. They are 3 aspects of human, cultural, creative work. Our thinking is disposed for science. Our feeling and heart is disposed for artistic work. And our will wants to serve God, the divine, the spiritual world. In our will, we are religious. In our feeling, we are artists. And in our thinking, we are scientists. And this is full humanity. This is anthroposophy. And Marie Steiner represents the heart of anthroposophy and could help Rudolf Steiner to develop this. And maybe a last word about her social healing faculties. When I came to Dornach, I read this beautiful volume she published about the Christmas Foundation meeting. And in the preface, in her preface to the Christmas Foundation meeting report, she writes, if you study Rudolf Steiner's Christmas Foundation conference, with the foundation stone meditation rhythms, with all the discussions about the statutes and how he dealt with regularities and legal work, and the beautiful evening lectures about mankind's history and the role of anthroposophy. When you study this, then you have a teaching how to solve social problems. And that was for me the biggest help for my work in the medical section, because I followed her advice and built up the medical section along Rudolf Steiner's guidelines on leadership he reveals in this beautiful Christmas Foundation conference. So I just wanted to share my personal gratitude as well to this individuality. And I think to work more consciously with speech in our time, which is so full of fake news and misunderstandings, this has a huge, huge future. And without this artistic aspect that we develop humanity through artistic activities, we will not make peace and healing in the social. So we need this triangle at least. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, dear Michaela. Yeah, that was so touching for all of us that are listening. So we thank you for offering this beautiful picture of Marie Steiner that can support us as we go forward and looking for healing this year to begin in a reconciliation. So yeah, so I thank you for all of us very much, and wish blessings for your friend who you shall go. So we say thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, and have a very, very good further deepened work together. And I'm sure this is for Marie Steiner beautiful to experience our gratitude. Yeah. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, dear.